The modern world doesn't acknowledge, but in our time, many yearn to break free of a prison of flat secular materialism. Wait, wrong podcast. But if you aren't already listening to Lord of Spirits, you definitely should be. The modern health paradigm is just as beholden, though, to materialism. We're constantly bombarded with wellness trends, diet fads, and self-optimization strategies, but very few consider health through the lens of Orthodox Christianity. This podcast is here to change that. We'll dive into topics like fasting, prayer, stress, nutrition, and even physical training, all while staying rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Church.
Each episode will break down key health topics from an Orthodox perspective, bringing in guests, whether they're priests, health professionals, or experts in traditional wisdom, to help us navigate the practical and spiritual aspects of true well-being.
Welcome to Orthodox Health, the podcast where we explore the intersection of Orthodox Christianity, physical health, mental well-being, and spiritual growth. I'm Dr. Michael Christian, joined by my co-host John, and we're excited to take this journey with you. So grab a cup of coffee, lots of cream, coconut for fasting, and let's get started.
Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Welcome back to the Orthodox Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Christian.
And I'm John, your co-host. Welcome back, everyone.
That's right. And we are right in the thick of the Nativity season. And if you caught last week's episode, you know that we took a hard turn away from Santa Merch and back towards St. Nicholas of Myra with our friend, John's priest, Father Jonathan Ivanov.
Absolutely. And that conversation has been sticking with me all week, especially the way that Father Jonathan had framed almsgiving, because it's really important that giving is not just about being a nice person around Christmas. It's literally part and core of our salvation, part of how we become like Christ.
Right. And we talked about how St. Nicholas's generosity wasn't a branding exercise. He wasn't just leaving coins so people would write a blog about him, as if anybody does that anymore. They send a couple tweets or X's. Man, I'm just getting old. But he was secretly meeting real needs, seeing real people.
That's right. And we also got into how the nativity season in the West has turned into this weird mashup of sentimentality, consumerism, and psychological pressure. Buy everything, eat everything, and then you could be miserable about both of those things come January.
Right. Which, if you think about it, is the exact opposite rhythm of Orthodox fasting and feasting. We're supposed to restrain before the feast so that we actually have the capacity to rejoice and give, not to just punish ourselves because we binged through the whole thing.
And that kind of sets us up for today's discussion because, okay, if we're called to fast, we do have to ask, what are we fasting on? What are we actually putting into our mouths when the calendar says no meat and no dairy?
Exactly. So today's episode is called Beyond Vegan, Fake Meats, Food 2.0, and Technocratic Fasting with our good friend, Nick Hillman. And we're going to zoom in on this collision between real historic Christian fasting and this brave new world of fake meats, GMOs, lab-grown proteins, insect burgers, and what folks are now calling the future of food.
Right, because if you spend at least 5 minutes online, you're going to hear things like plant-based is the compassionate choice, or meat is destroying the planet, maybe even the future is precision fermentation and 3D printed steaks. And that's before you even get to the you will eat the bugs and be happy memes, as we've discussed previously on the show.
That's right. Meanwhile, the average Orthodox family is just trying to get through a Wednesday fast with 3 kids, 1 income, and an Aldi that mostly stocks Beyond Burgers, canola oil, and vegan cheese product.
And so on the one hand, you've got real people with real constraints just trying to honor the fast. And on the other hand, you've got these massive foundations and corporations that are telling us what quote unquote good eating is supposed to look like. And shockingly, or not so shockingly, it always seems to involve buying their latest product.
That's right. And to help us sort through all of this, we are bringing back a familiar voice. If you remember when Nick Hillman was on before, we went deep on why meat itself is not the villain and how regenerative and sane agriculture actually heals the land instead of destroying it.
Absolutely, Mike. Nick helped us pull the conversation away from the body worship on the one side and body despising on the other and back towards true stewardship.
And since that episode, the rhetoric out there has only gotten louder. More pressure to be plant-based in this very specific ultra-processed way, more talk about lab-grown meat as the ethical future, more GMO solutions, as if it could be, pushed in the name of sustainability and feeding the world, which brings us back to the phrase I really want us to wrestle with today, technocratic fasting.
Right. And so what do we mean by that? Because when I hear technocratic fasting, I picture some guy in a Davos conference room deciding how many grams of cricket protein that I'm allowed to eat to keep my social credit score up. God forbid.
And that basically is it. Conversely, Orthodox fasting is freely chosen obedience given by the church, but ordered towards repentance, love, and healing. Technocratic fasting is top-down rationing given by foundations, governments, local and not so local, and corporations. And it is ordered towards whatever metrics they've decided matter. Carbon scores, ESG ratings, population targets, stakeholder value.
It's like a modern Holodomor.
Yeah, something like that. And the same people pulling the strings.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of the priest saying, let's work together so that you can keep the fast in a way that brings you closer to Christ, you end up with an app saying, you've exceeded your weekly cow allowance. Here's a coupon for lab-printed steak.
Hey, and for all you Nazis out there, I was just talking about the socialists, the AOCs and everything. Those are the same people who caused the Holodomor. But having said that, I don't want anybody to think I'm accidentally dog whistling over here. In the middle of that, you have real Orthodox Christians who truly want to be compassionate, who love creation, who care about the poor, who are being told that the way to do that is to live on soy isolate, seed oils, and patented pea protein. So today, we're really going to dive into what's actually inside of these fake meats metabolically, what GMOs and an industrial future of food does to our microbiome and our nervous system, and how all of that maps out into the bigger pattern that we've been tracing recently on the show. Whether it's the Blue Zone's longevity marketing, and now food as a lever of control versus food as a gift from God. But then we'll land this plane with some very concrete steps, particularly what does it look like to fast on real food, not fake food, without going broke or insane in the process.
Absolutely, Mike. And importantly, doing all of that without shaming the mom who grabbed the vegan nuggets because that's what was in the freezer at 6:30 at night on a Wednesday.
Absolutely. This really is about mercy and clarity, not just new food legalism. So with that being said, Nick, brother, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you.
Dr. Mike, John, it's great to be back. Thank you for the invitation again to talk about this very exciting and important topic.
Absolutely. And we've been planning this episode for quite a while now. James Corbett had released a video on the future of food back over the summer, and I saw it. I was like, this is really interesting stuff. Sent it right up to Nick. I'm like, book your calendar for the end of the year because we got a couple of other arcs we already had planned, the women's arc, the sacred diets arc, and all of that. And so we're like, no, that'll slot right in during the nativity fast, all the fake meats and everything. So get ready. And he's been prepping ever since. Having said that, what do those phrases, the future of food, food 2.0, what are the first things that come to mind when you hear that?
Well, initially, to the unknown consumer, you're looking at that as a good feeling. It's a promising message of hope because we've had such a look down on farming and farmers and agriculture over the last few decades, with some of the propaganda being put out and some of the information being dispersed. So they look at that like, oh, we're revitalizing the system and we're going to make sure that we're feeding the world. That's a common trope they bring out all the time. But unfortunately, when you scratch beneath the surface, you start following the money, following who's pushing these agendas, endorsing these operations. You start to kind of realize it's a little more nefarious than that. Kind of brings a little bit more concern to the picture of what they're actually trying to accomplish with these goalpost markers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much we can get into. And it's like you said, there's a lot that has gone on in modern time with regard to commercial agriculture, as we talked about in our prior episode, that it rubs them the wrong way in terms of their view of agriculture and all the inputs and the effect on the environment and the quality of the product that's being produced for them. So when they hear we're going to revitalize things, I mean, that sort of is implicitly saying it's going to be better. But like you said, once you start following the money and looking at who's moving and shaking things, it's not that cut and dry.
Absolutely. And you know what? I just realized, for those of you who didn't catch the first episode, we should probably allow Nick to reintroduce himself. But if you didn't, pause right here, circle back, go watch the first episode, come on back. But if you didn't, Nick Take it away.
So for all of you out there, my name is Nick Hillman. I am a agriculture consultant based out of North Texas. I have been in the agriculture industry for almost 2 decades now. My primary focus is with perennial crops, that being orchards and vineyards. I have a background in agronomy and soil science, and my approach is with revitalizing soil health with regenerative practices. It's a very common term that's being thrown around and utilized today, a lot of marketing operations, but with regenerative, we're basically revitalizing and rehealing the ecology, the soil, and the environment with practices to reduce inputs, return to a relatively closed-looped system where you're maximizing nutrient density within the food that you're producing and you're growing, and the livestock as well. So as well, because I'm on this podcast, I am an Orthodox Christian. I'm cradle Orthodox, been utilizing the liturgical calendar to adhere to the fasting periods and the feasting periods. All of this centers my entire life.
What if the medicine of the future was ancient? What if the practices that steady your nervous system, train appetite, and restore meaning weren't new hacks, but old paths we've forgotten? Fasting, prayer, almsgiving, and communion. What if healing was less about novelty and more about returning to what heals the whole person? I'm Dr. Michael Christian Kuhn, functional health clinician, or as I prefer, health detective. And my new book, Orthodoxy and the Medicine of the Future, Rediscovering the Healing Power of Fasting, Prayer, and Holy Tradition, is available now. This book is a labor of love, 7 years in the making. It began with my doctoral thesis and became a roadmap for true healing. Fasting, prayer, and holy tradition, not simply as slogans, but as a way to heal the whole person, body, mind, and soul. Inside, I lay out 3 big things: why modern health feels so fragmented, and how we've lost the thread between body and worship, and metabolism and meaning. Secondly, how the ascetic life restores desire and physiology, and why the church's wisdom calms the nervous system, trains appetite, and builds real peace. In it, you'll find a practical 40-day path with simple, actionable steps to begin. Prayer anchors, fasting guidance, sleep and light hygiene, movement, breath, and a short daily examine. No fluff, clear actions. So if the Orthodox Health Podcast has helped you put peace back under grace, this here is the whole map, big picture, and the daily steps. It's for the busy Orthodox parent, the exhausted professional, and the person who's tried everything under the sun but wants true healing without losing the soul. If you've been waiting, today is the day. Head on over to Amazon and look for Orthodoxy and the Medicine of the Future. Or if you want a signed copy along with all the digital bonuses, head on over to orthodoxhealth.com/book, and I'll incorporate you in with the existing pre-orders and send you out a signed copy. Thank you for trusting me with your health journey.
Yeah, just to jump off from there, since we last talked, have you been seeing among your clients or just in the industry in general, people looking for the plant-based diets or fake meats, or are they asking you questions about that stuff? Is it starting to become more common to hear about?
Yeah, I would say definitely with a lot of the converts that are coming in, the inquirers, because as we all know, there's a massive uptick in orthodoxy and the interest in it. Had some substantial growth at the parish my family and I attend. And so you get a lot of individuals that are coming in and they know fasting as more of a secular dietary way of attempting to get healthy, but they obviously don't understand about the aspect of fasting that we utilize it for in the church. So we'll get to talking and they'll start asking about restrictions and what we can eat, what we can't eat, how to build options. And especially it's an interesting thing being in Texas, where Texas, as we all know, barbecue is basically a sacrament to them. It's a hard transition for a lot of these people, and they're trying to figure out what best options they can have to follow the fast correctly.
Absolutely. So how does all of this, like you mentioned, the secularized, the moralized diet language, how does that turn into what we were calling this technocratic fasting, where it's being pushed top down, like we said, right? Where you have the Peter Thiels going on Joe Rogan and all these different elite institutionalized people effectively telling people when and what they should sacrifice, as opposed to what the church has traditionally recommended.
Yeah, it's very concerning seeing this push for these diets and the food they're trying to produce in a lab-grown setting. Basically, you're cutting out the connection to God and God's creation that he bestowed upon us. And we were given, as we read in Genesis, we were given dominion over the land, the sea, and the air, and the creatures that reside within it. And not only dominion, but stewardship. So we look at it as, and I actually was just recently sitting in a lecture from an individual who runs a very big cover crop seeding operation that we utilize in some of the farming aspects, all heirloom seeds, organic. And he gave a very good analysis of it, that stewardship is basically you're improving upon the land. You're trying to fix and heal the land and make it better for future inhabitants, leave it better than you found it. Dominion is protection of the land, in essence. And we need to be protecting and preserving the land. So, in that aspect, I'd say in general, because of industrial farming, commercial ag, agrochemicals, especially through the Green Revolution, let's say the last 100 years, 120 years, we haven't really been doing a good job of that. You're starting to see more uptick and more interest with this, with consumers and with farmers now trying to shift their ways, which it's a very hopeful sign. But the concern now is we're having to deal with these individuals at higher upper echelons who are policymakers and the corporations we had talked about, trying to push these other things into us under the guise of, oh, we're trying to make things better and more convenient, and whatever other language they're trying to spin. But ultimately, it's more cloaking under the auspice of control. They want control of you, your personhood, your food choices. And that's the greater concern out of everything else.
Nah, it's very true. And it's a situation where I've been talking about this. I think one of the first or second, maybe number 3 episode of Ask Mike the Caveman a decade ago was on the Beyond Meat. That was when it was first coming out. And even back then, I was like, no, this is just not going to be a good thing. We need to be addressing that. And so the sad part is it reaches broad appeal because we haven't been good stewards. We haven't properly maintained the dominion of our environment. And because of that, there is a market that can be tapped into. But as you said, that shift where there are people who think they're being compassionate to the animals, to the earth, to all the different things, and are contributing to its destruction while applying the shackles themselves, honestly.
But yeah, exactly.
Well, that worldview lacks the type of framework that we have as Orthodox Christians that, for example, after the flood of Noah, when God gives sanction for people to consume meat product. So there's nothing inherently unjust about doing that. It's been sanctioned by God himself. But then we get into the idea of stewardship and dominion. There is an appropriate way to do that stewards the animal and protects that species of animal. We're, again, not doing a very good job of it. But I was thinking Nick, when you were talking about dominion of the land being the protection of it against these sort of abuses, I immediately went to the small family farm. And
yes.
I feel like my first instinct when thinking that is that how does a small startup farm like that, or even like a generational farm, stand up to big agriculture? I mean, we talked a little bit about this in our last episode with you, but it just seems like a David and Goliath situation. We'll probably talk a little bit later on about guys like Bill Gates buying up all this farmland. And it's like, how do we stop that from happening? At risk of sounding a little bit communist, there might be some benefit in expropriating that land from him and giving it back to the small farmers.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, I would say it's even more communist what he's doing with the way they're trying to centralize and control food production. This goes back to the famous Henry Kissinger quote, "Who controls the food controls the people." And you can look back, I believe it was 1974, he came out with the National Security Study Memorandum number 200. And you look at that, and then you look throughout history. The Romans sacking Carthage, and what did they do immediately afterwards? They salted the earth to make sure that the Carthaginians could not grow their own food. You look at the Holodomor that occurred in Ukraine with the kulaks, and Stalin centralizing and controlling the food. You look at the Irish potato famine with the English. So unfortunately, it's the same playbook, but they're just modifying things and they're modernizing it, so to speak. And yeah, it really does come down to defending local food sovereignty. With the consumer, it's being informed and understanding where your dollar's going, who you're supporting. I try to instill this on people who we discuss this conversation, this topic, and I go, have you met your local farmer? Have you gone to the farmer's market? Have you shaken their hand? Have you asked them these kind of questions? How do you raise your animals? How are you tending your fields? Those are the kind of things that need to be done. Obviously, not everyone can do that, though, because some people are living in cities or areas that are not as agrarian. I understand that. There are avenues, and we'll get into that more later, and I'm happy to provide resources and links to things that we can share in the show notes. Sorry to steal that from you, Dr. Mike.
That'd be wonderful.
But yeah, it really does come down to building on a local community level. And I'd say as much as we all have issues with the vast frustrations of social media and the internet and all these other things, there are ways to use it positively and use it for good and connecting with other like-minded individuals out there. So it really does come down to going in and trying to make connections with the other people in mind. Because I would say that since, especially over the last 5 years, there was a certain incident I won't directly reference, but we all know what that incident was that forced people to stay at home for a while. People started having time on their hands, so they started researching and looking into things and studying. And I'd say there's been a massive uptick in awakening and learning more and more about the way the system is set up. And so now I would say compared to say maybe, 10, 15 years ago, we have much larger amount of informed consumers out there that are really wanting to know where our food is coming from, how it's grown, how the land is tended, all of that.
That's beautiful. And we generally like to refer to those as the dark years around here, which I never heard us say that, but having
dark
said
years.
that,
Yeah.
So are you familiar with Texas Slim?
I'll have to look it up. I feel like you sent me something in the past, but it's just not ringing a bell. So I'll have to look it up.
No, that's cool. He's over at the Beef Initiative. And when you were saying about shake your farmer's hand, that's something that I've heard him rant on, and I'm sure it's pretty big in your communities. But
yeah,
shake your farmer's hand, shake your farmer's hand. The guy's got more energy than a rabbit on cocaine. But
very good.
Having said that, yeah, no, that really is the biggest thing, though, is without sounding too Jordan Peterson of just clean your room, bucko, where you need to start small. You start on your personal level. What can you do? You said people learned during these last couple of years, those dark years. What can I do on a small scale? And then from there, you reach out to your community and you see in your parish, you can start with that and say, hey, you do this, I do that. Okay, cool. And you start to network it that way. And then, as you said, with the social media resources, you can start to go out and have those concentric circles like we talked about with Father Jonathan the first time, where you're building that community outward. And to your question of what do we do, I think that's it. We just have to start ground up because they're going to keep smashing us top down and short of, some kind of violent revolution. And let's be very clear to our AI overlords who are listening to this right now, and to my federal agent, all of you know I am not advocating for that. Let's be very clear. I am advocating for the ground up. Okay. I'm just saying, short of doing it the other way, which I do not advocate. We are not commies around here. We do not have that revolutionary spirit. So that is not our calling here. We are going to try to do it the right way. But that's really it. Bill Gates has all of his land here in Arkansas and all throughout the country. And I think he's the largest landholder in Arkansas at this point. He's got his rice paddies. So definitely not as much of a fan of rice in Arkansas anymore, even though we were such great producers of it. Having said that, we talked about that Corbett episode that helped to inspire this one here. I know that you were taking copious notes. You said you were going to try and challenge Rob Sirico for the most notes taken before an Orthodox Health podcast episode. What were your big takeaways from that in particular? Because obviously a lot of our listeners probably haven't seen that video.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's very informative. It is a bit dark for about the first 25 minutes or so, and then it starts to shed some light into hope. And that's the big thing is, being diligent about understanding what's going on, but don't let it overcome you with grief and fear, because that's how you let the enemy win. That's how you let the devil win. You don't allow that to happen. A couple interesting things that came into it, especially with the narratives of the food crises, as everyone's noticed, the shortages, the egg issues, the avian flu, the fires that have been ravishing a lot of these processing plants, and the very strategic stories that are implanted into our news feeds. It does really play into the theory that a lot of this is potentially pre-planned. I mean, it just doesn't seem like so many of these instances were happening so happenstance and so randomly. And then you start to notice, like Corbett does go into detail about a lot of these quote unquote war games that were being played with a lot of these philanthropic operations. And then they immediately have a solution, even before the fires have gone out, no pun intended. So with those situations, be discerning of them and be aware of what's going on, but it also gives you the incentive to really bolster yourself locally and to seek out those others out there who are also keeping an eye on this stuff and trying to build their local sovereignty in their food operations.
I was just thinking, I think there's something else that happened where they had some war games and a ready-made solution. I think, as you mentioned, Mike, during the dark years,
Mm-hmm.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's always the same, if you can notice the patterns. But
Indeed.
it is very disheartening, as you said, in that early opening of that video. But it sheds light on a lot of these serious problems that are going on. But he does end on a hopeful note, and thank God for that. But it's like you said, he actually comes away with the similar solution that you had just provided us, is that it's a local solution, that it's from the ground up. And essentially, if you have a firm foundation in local networking, you can topple these giants.
Mhm.
Goliath can be defeated.
Beautiful. So you mentioned it a little bit before, but talking about food as a weapon, and that goes even from, again, top-down kind of idea, whether we're talking about the Romans not even just salting the earth, but even just keeping their troops, they were keeping them on predominantly bread. Same thing going to medieval times, right? And you went into the Irish potato famine, where they're on these very starch-heavy and grain-heavy diets, where it's sustenance to allow you to continue to move, but never to actually thrive. And so, having seen that, while now we are moving towards, oh, we're going to genetically engineer and we're going to produce in a lab these different protein sources, because people have come on to and realized that, well, we still need protein now. And everybody understands that. You can't get away with, well, just eat bread, man. You'll be fine. How does that echo today into the modern food system and the policy world? Like, so even on the production end.
Yeah. So as we've touched on this, they're basically trying to upend our traditional agrarian system and our agriculture system. That obviously, as we've talked about in the last episode and briefly on this episode, the industrial food operations and the green revolution has been catastrophic to our environment, to our biodiversity, to the nutrient food density. I mean, going back to 1920, Sir Albert Howard was discussing this. Going into that, he was talking about how nutrient density was dropping. And even, not that I agree with him completely, but Rudolf Steiner was even discussing this too, as he was coming out with his agriculture lectures. So it is becoming a bit of a concern, especially because we have some alarmists that are coming out and they're saying we only have X amount of harvests. I've heard some people say it's 50 harvests, 40 harvests, until the earth or the topsoil of the earth is completely done away with, which it's hard to say because we are seeing a lot of people working very hard to regenerate the earth and regenerate the soil and bring us back into the initial perfect design that was created by God. But as we've talked about this Food 2.0 technocratic system, their solution is to basically do away with what we've known for thousands of years and to bring about everything basically out of bioreactors and labs. We have the solutions with technology. Scientism will save the day. But what we're starting to realize is that's not the case. It's actually causing, from what we've noticed over the last few decades, and very, very knowledgeable researchers, whistleblowers are coming out and they're showing, no, this is causing even more harm than good to the ground, to the actual food, actual rises in pest and disease problems and pestilence, and to the end consumer.
That really is a demonstration of the end result of a materialist framework when it comes to trying to understand health of the body, health of the planet, where it's, oh, well, we need these certain inputs on the body side. It's, oh, well, you just need these these four if we include water, right? You just need fat, protein, carbohydrate. You need those macronutrients along with water, and that's it. And then, oh, wait, no, there's vitamins and minerals. So, okay, we have to address the micronutrients. Well, if we just get the correct amount here, then, oh, wait, no, now there's phytochemicals that might actually have a benefit. And there are these other non-nutritive ingredients that might be important. Oh, wait, your microbiome is important. And then it just cascades where there are all these other intangible factors that we didn't consider, but we're going to put those into this here soy slop and call that nutrition. This is going to be the life-giving health. And every single time we think we've conquered God and created something that's better, it falls flat on its face. And I know that from the health side, I'm sure you can talk from the agricultural side about just the different inputs and everything. I know personally, I just know about the different fertilizers. We talked about it a little bit last time, but
yeah, so to touch a little bit more on what we discussed last episode, as we know, the synthesizing of certain minerals came into play moving through the world wars, and as well a lot of the pesticides came into play. So we were killing soldiers on the field with these toxic gases, and we decided, oh well, we not going to use these anymore because of the Geneva Convention, other things. Let's put it on our food. That's a good idea. And what we're also realizing is that with the use of these synthetic fertilizers, it was actually causing more problems than good, and it was weakening the defense mechanisms within the soil and the plants and the microbiome, and so they became very weak to pest and disease that usually could have staved off. Again, it's just reactionary, reactionary, reactionary. So what they're trying to do now is with this onset of genetically modified organisms. And this technology has been around for some time. I mean, at the present moment, I have to double check, but I believe we have 10 commercial genetically modified organisms that are used in farming systems for textile production to food to forage for livestock animals. And what a lot of the data is showing with a lot of the research is basically we're putting in these, and to backtrack, so for genetically modified organisms to work, we're in a laboratory setting. Instead of traditional plant breeding, which takes many, many generations to actually see a change. And you're working within the same species. It could be different varieties, but you're working within the same species to get certain traits. But it takes time. It's a natural progression. Genetically modified organisms, you're going in at the DNA level and you're changing the genome. You're adding something in, you're taking something out. And you're putting in foreign proteins onto that genome sequence. So what that's doing is, when you put that in, the crop or the animal consuming that feed or the human consuming it, it's a foreign protein. And so your immune system is going to respond accordingly to something foreign. It's going to fight it. And you're going to be put into places of inflammation. And so that, coupled with the issues of toxic environment around us, the pesticide residue, one of the big ones right now being glyphosate. That's the big buzzword we're hearing, especially now that one of the most cited research papers, and this happened last week, so this is still breaking news, one of the most cited research papers from 2000, claiming that glyphosate was safe and there was no cancer-causing problems or anything else, just got retracted, which is unbelievable. It was by the Pharmacology and Toxicology Journal. It got retracted because of some very, very serious ethical issues from Monsanto. There's ghostwriting by employees of Monsanto without proper acknowledgement. They relied solely on unpublished studies from Monsanto, ignoring relevant research at the time that was showing these concerns. And there were potential conflicts of interest among the authors that was not disclosed. And this study, for the last 25 years, was in the top 0.1% of cited articles on glyphosate, claiming it was safe, shaping public perception and policy decisions, especially with, for us, the EPA. So it's very concerning, especially because we're having, over the last few years, we've been seeing a massive uptick in lawsuits across the country with individuals who are making very detailed claims about their concerns about the cancers and other chronic diseases they're suffering from because of exposure to glyphosate and use of glyphosate for years. And this is also amid the current administration and their State Department asking the Supreme Court to block cancer patient lawsuits against Bayer Monsanto. So you're just like, you got to be kidding me. Lord have mercy.
Lord have mercy is right. One last thought. It's kind of funny. That was a video. I remember when that merger first happened, when it was first announced, there was a video of me, if you want to scroll on back to, and ask about the caveman days, I am literally wearing a tinfoil hat and asking, should we be concerned about the merger of Bayer Monsanto?
Yeah, a pharmaceutical company and an agrochemical company come together.
Well,
I wonder.
I will even go one step further. I'll give you a little teaser on what I went through on that. And that's why I was wearing the tinfoil, because I was joking. So the largest manufacturer of a product that is used to fight headaches and migraines is now being purchased by merging with a company whose product, who at the very least, even if you reject all the other things, is known to cause headaches and migraines, even on the most basic level. So seemed a little bit interesting. We're going to get you coming and going with, we're going to cause some migraines, and here you go. Here's your solution.
Yeah.
So that was part of what my concerns were at the time.
Exactly. And rightfully so. Rightfully so.
It's crazy. And I mean, it's like I said before, it's the same way with everything. They get you coming and going. Oh, we're diluting the nutrient density of your food because we're taking horrible care of the soil. Here's this 3D printed meat that we're going to tell you is nutrient dense. It'll solve that problem for you. It's like, Lord have mercy. I mean, 3D printed stuff is particularly alarming to me. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
all alarming, but the notion that you can print food is absurd. I don't even know how anybody could look at that and think that this is a viable option for consumption. We're taking something that is lifeless and pretending that it's going to provide life for us. It is the most mad science crazy thing I've ever heard.
Dr. Frankenstein's steakhouse right there.
Mhm. For real. And
Yeah.
if you've ever seen videos of these things working, the
Mm-hmm.
materials as they're being printed, it'll turn your stomach.
Yeah.
Thinking that that's eventually going to be consumed by a human being.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the whole thing too. It's our food system and the marketing behind it. Thanks a lot, Edward Bernays. But you're looking at it, and the whole operation has been designed for high yield and aesthetics, not about nutrient density. And there is a promise to this, though, and there is some good hope with it. So last week I was at an agriculture conference, and if anyone really wants to get into agriculture, is home gardening or anything like that, I can't recommend enough the organization Acres USA. They've been at the forefront for 50 years on ecological agriculture and smart regenerative organic practices. There's a speaker there. His name's Dan Kittredge. He's been in the forefront of this for a very long time, and he's doing a massive study on nutrient density in our food. And he's going through, I can't even tell you how many data sets, but it was very impressive to see. And he was saying the massive importance of soil health in the long run, building our soil health is going to build our nutrient density, like we had talked about in the previous episode. And that's really what it comes down to. So it does bring some hope and promise to the frustrating message that we're being bombarded with, of course.
Absolutely. And so tying it back to the Orthodox fast and the new converts and everything, all too often they come on over and they jump in and they say, oh, look at this. There's this vegan cheese and this vegan beef and there's Impossible Burger and these Beyond Chicken and all these different things, which, sidebar, I remember a couple months ago took a major tank in the stock market. So praise God for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gil. But having said that, I always try to direct people who I'm talking to at coffee hour or to my clients or anybody else who is silly enough to ask me a question related to health. Stay away from the Franken meats. Yes, technically speaking, from a fasting standpoint, there is nothing wrong with consuming them. Yes, you hear the word spirit of the fast thrown around a lot, and there is something to that, but it's not really what it is. It's not, you can't have anything that's meat-like because it's going to bring you too much towards it. No, because it actually is not meat.
Yeah.
It's not really going to break the fast. It just gets into too squirrely of a territory where the health benefits don't exist. And that does, though, bring us to the creation, like I said, the 3D printed or the other lab created, the bioreactor created meats. That I do want to talk to a priest about. Does that actually violate? Because now, even though it's not really God-created meat, it's meat. Where does that land? Having said all of that, what really stands out? I mean, you are in the field in terms of the agriculture and the actual development process. Like, what really jumps out at you in terms of how weird it is to have these types of foods?
It's hard to imagine that we've gotten to this point, that the response to the years of land degradation and massive extraction has gotten to very, very dystopian for our food source and everything. I always try to relate something that was taught to me at a very young age by my little Greek grandmother: garbage in, garbage out. And that goes not just with your entertainment or negative thoughts or things like that. I think it falls in line with what you're putting into your body, because we are made in the image of God. We need to be consuming things that are going to be beneficial and healthy to us. And so we have to make a concerted effort to do that at all times. And I understand it is tough. It is tough for people to find good, viable options around them. Totally understand that. I think that is an important thing to bring to your spiritual father and your priest. Discuss that with them, especially during fasting periods. You're having a very hard time because it's one of those things, like we've talked about, where the new converts having the zeal and going headlong into it. You got to build up to the fast. You have to build up to really following it. And some people, it might take them longer than others. We're not all going to be immediately saintly just because we've been baptized. We're going to be struggling and striving for theosis our entire life. So if that means that maybe at a certain fasting period, it's going to be harder for you to try to stick with certain foods or, sourcing out certain foods. Maybe it's that you need to be fasting from something else that's a tough distraction to you, the social media, the phone, whatever it is, so you can have more centered and focused on God. And then gradually you're building up to making sure you're getting fast, friendly, whole foods.
Absolutely. Just don't fast from the Orthodox Health Podcast.
No, never.
Unless, of course, you really do have that kind of addiction to social media and to consumption of media, then yes, you can even skip us for a little bit, I guess.
I'm interested to know, to what degree, if any, do you see the introduction of these new creations in terms of food? Are they potentially going to degrade the potential of us to create real food in the future, directly or indirectly? Like the existence of these things having ripple effects that could affect our ability to do what we do want to and have always done.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, production and consumption of these foods and what they could potentially do to us.
Yeah, for our health and for the health of the soil, of real crops,
Yeah.
for all those things.
So I think this, and we can again revert back to the glyphosate conversation to have a truly good understanding of what it is and why it has been so demonized, rightly so, by the right people who are asking the right questions, and especially under horrible backlash. I mean, some of these researchers over the years have had their entire livelihoods destroyed by being honest and truthful in the face of this adversity and this Leviathan. Basically, as we talked about in the last episode, so glyphosate originally was discovered around the 50s by an industrial operation in Northern Europe, and it was for the use in cleaning pipes and descaling boilers. And it started to get some understanding of it for agriculture use around the 60s, but nothing patented for herbicides. But around 1973, 74, Monsanto, who had been in existence for quite some time, wanted to take on the patent for it and do studies on it. And basically, the mechanism of it, there's multiple mechanisms of it. As we had talked about previously, it is patented since 2004 as an antimicrobial. So it goes off and it kills off the beneficial microbes, which is very interesting because even at low doses of it, it will very detrimentally affect the beneficial microbial populations, and it will actually stimulate and grow the opportunistic and pathogenic microbial populations in the soil, which is wild.
That sounds great for our gut.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. And then simultaneously, it's a strong chelation. So chelators is, and Dr. Mike obviously knows all about this. We have our friendly chelators and we have our strong chelators. The friendly chelators are the ones that say the beneficial bacteria in the soil are going out and they're mining minerals and they're finding the minerals that the plant needs. And the minerals are likely not going to be in a plant bioavailable form for uptake, but those friendly chelators are encapsulating and delivering those beneficial nutrients to the plant in exchange for the sugar that's produced by photosynthesis. What a strong chelator does is it basically locks up those minerals and they're not plant available anymore. So it has the complete antagonistic opposite effect. And what we've discovered is that glyphosate chelates very important minerals for plant health and vitality and metabolisms. Those being calcium, magnesium, manganese, which is very important for disease resistance, zinc, iron, copper, nickel, cobalt, boron, molybdenum, selenium, and potassium. You have to have roughly, ideally, 18 specific minerals for good solid plant production from vegetative to reproductive stage. And by cutting these off, it makes the plant deficient, it makes it weak, it makes it immunocompromised for when pathogens come in and start attacking it. And so it's just a very concerning situation because glyphosate is used so universally, and not just in cropping systems, landscape, everything else you could imagine. And now it's also being utilized as a defoliant. So as a crop is getting close to harvest, they'll utilize the glyphosate to basically move it into a faster stage for harvest and get it to a point where it's ready at a quicker stage. Now, that glyphosate residue is going to be on there for much longer than expected. So it's going into the forage feed for the animals, and then subsequently it's going to go into our food production and for the end consumer. So yeah, it's scary stuff.
Unreal.
And it's funny you say that they're going into the feed for the animals, right? Think about all the animals, all the cows that are grass fed, but then they're not grass finished. There's that last 10% where they're fed grains at the end to fatten them up right before slaughter. But if you also then just sprayed the glyphosate as a defoliant and you were using that to speed up that harvesting process, and now you fed that grain to the cow, you just jacked up 3 layers of the process before it even gets to you, and they can label it on that package as grass-fed, even though it wasn't grass-fed, grass-finished. So there's a lot of times where there's those words where oh, this is a great piece of meat. That's where getting to know your farmer or organizations that are doing things the right way is so important. And to the degree that you can do it yourself, please do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have cows. I wish I did. That'd be great. But unfortunately, I can't do that. So I have to get to know my farmer. So another idea, though, in terms of that, in terms of what are we able to do, to John's question before, it does create that issue. We see that with pharmaceuticals, right? People are taking their hormonal birth controls, they're taking antipsychotics, and we're finding those in the water supply, which is ending up in the runoff. So that's an area where it's ubiquitous and we can't really escape it. Or the glyphosate where it's being sprayed, or even the seeds, right? How many cases, you'd be much more versed on this, but how many cases do we see of people losing their farms because their patented seeds were dispersed by the wind, by birds or whatnot, and landed on somebody else's farm who was trying to do the right thing, doing the organic farming and doing everything properly or to the best of their ability, and the environment just kicked over this patented seed and they lost their farm over it.
Yeah, it's a very scary thing because the farmers that are utilizing this technology, they basically sign a contract. They cannot forage or save any of the seed after that harvest. They have to renew their contract and use the same seed. They'll have individuals from the operation that will come out and they'll do testing. And sometimes that testing isn't even done correctly. And so they're getting tested on a wrong area or wrong plot that wasn't patented or wasn't under contract. And so, yeah, it becomes just a massive legality nightmare. And yeah, they basically will lose their farm through litigation overnight because of these situations. It's insane. And these seeds are also self-replicating too. So that's another major concern of it.
Could you explain a little bit about that? What does it mean that a seed is self-replicating?
So basically it's duplicating itself after it's gone through a vegetative reproductive stage. It's creating additionals of it over time. So and then when they spread now, or they're spread by animals, wind, whatever, they'll just find a new spot and start growing in that area. Even though it was an unintended consequence, that seed was a neighbor's plot or something, that seed wasn't supposed to be there. So then that neighbor is possibly unknowingly growing something that he wasn't intending to grow. And then let's say somebody comes on, they're poking around, or there was also cases and studies apparently of farming neighbors ratting out their other neighbors and going, oh, he's growing Roundup Ready corn or soy or something, and he doesn't have a contract. And they come in and do their thing, land grab. And so it's a very scary thing.
And to that point, you mentioned about the contracts and how they're not allowed to grow anything else, and they have to keep continually buying the seeds.
And the products too. Under that contract, they have to be buying the glyphosate-based or Roundup-based herbicides to be used. They can't be using other stuff because that's not what the technology was designed for.
So, I mean, I've never been in the agricultural field or even really been adjacent to it where I live here. So this sounds like a horrible deal for the farmer.
Yeah.
What incentives or reasons are there that a farmer would choose to enter contracts like this? Because it sounds like it's all a losing situation for them.
The promise of high yields, the promise of continual good return on investment kind of goes back to a lot of the marketing that we were talking about earlier, where it's just built on good intentions. Oh, this technology is going to save your farm. It's going to make you more profitable. If you're growing certain crops, they're going to be subsidized by the government and the farm aid bill.
And in the end, it all goes back to sounding like you'll own nothing and be happy. Because you don't actually get to save that seed, right? How many times in the past, we have seed banks that you hold on to, and now, hey, I had a good yield this year. I'm going to, do you need some of these seeds here? You had that community where you could actually share.
Or it's, man, this crop was really good and resilient with these stressors that were going on this season, or had no disease pressure. I want to keep this and keep growing the genetics that were within this seed that were being portrayed. It's a very nefarious system that's set up.
There was a radio broadcast. You could find this on YouTube. The title is We Were Warned, Freedom to Chains, Paul Harvey. So in that video, the reason I thought of it is because there's a certain part where he talks about people wanting security over freedom. And he says that they gave us chains and we were secure. It's reminded me of that. Oh, the promise of all these things, and the thing that they're actually offering you is chains.
Yeah, the famous saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't know, it's a very troubling thing, but simultaneously we're starting to see the light on all this stuff. I mean, going back and referencing that retraction of that major paper is enormous. It's going to have massive rippling effect, because I believe it was on the federal level, if I remember correctly, but there was a bill that was coming out that was going to bring federal protections to pesticide producers against litigation across the country. But as far as I know, I don't think it's been brought to the floor yet. But it's one of those things where now there's a lot standing against them, and their constituents, seeing the information that's being put out, they're going to be like, yeah, how are you going to vote on this, bud? So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't want to put all faith in the government, obviously, because
Of course.
that's not how my MO works. But at the same time, it's like, it's bringing more to light.
So we've mentioned a couple of times now about how there's a top-down push, whether it be the Rockefellers in the past, the Gates today, the NGOs, the aid agencies, and their role in the promotion and proliferation of these novel technologies. And the question then is, why does that matter? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. Going back to following the money, look back at their track records. The Gates Foundation, all these foundations, philanthropic. Philanthropic. We're doing this to save humanity, betterment and convenience and modernization and all these beautiful sounding words and slogans. You pull back the curtain and you're seeing what their track record is. And the Rockefellers coming in, I'd have to look back on my dates, but let's say the turn of the century, around the 20th century, they're really pushing into agrochemical operations and heavy machinery and shifting from the wartime machinery and the wartime production to agriculture to really push this commercialization. And basically all that stuff that's been done for thousands of years, that's outdated. We don't need to do that anymore. Let's focus on intensive, heavy farming operations and heavy equipment. It's going to break the bank of the farm. That's the way to go. And then simultaneously, the Gates Foundation, I mean, I don't know where to begin with them. Bill Gates, his father, his grandfather, all eugenicists at the end of the day. That's all they focus on. They're so adamant about population control. It's like, makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. That's why he is so adamant about funding a lot of these biotech companies, these food operations, GMO operations, because I'm pretty sure he knows that all this stuff is not beneficial to our health and our livelihood, not beneficial to the environment. Very, very calculated when you look at it from a 1,000-yard view.
Absolutely. I mean, what do we make of the same organizations and entities that help to industrialize and chemically saturate agriculture in the past are now producing and promoting this clean, this future, and buying up all that farmland?
It's sort of like we talked about with some of the strategic games that have been played over the years. It's the same sort of playbook if you look back at it, where we're going to upend the system by pushing these new innovations. 100 years later, oh man, look at all this land degradation. That's so crazy. And we keep having to come out with stronger and stronger chemicals, and yet the problems and the pests keep persisting and actually are evolving to it. Oh, we have a new solution for you. We're just going to grow everything in a lab. It's fine. It'll be fine. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, the further centralization of the production of food, it reminds me of sort of the push for things like digital currency too, where it's moving further and further away from the natural and tangible into the abstract. And the people that control the abstraction they dictate the terms. It's very, very concerning, but we're trying to move back again into the incarnational principle. We want to move back to the tangible. And then obviously have that tangible thing raised up. But first we have to stop degrading it.
Exactly. It's a tough road to walk, of course. And I mean, it's daunting on everyone seeing this messaging and these things that are trying to be pushed, but that doesn't mean that we're out of the fight and all hope is lost. There is definite road to recovery with all this stuff.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fact that you do what you do is hopeful, that there's people like you that are in the industry doing work for regenerative agriculture and pushing the principles of faith in how we produce food and how we think about and care for the land. The fact that guys like you are out there is extremely hopeful. So thank you.
I'm just a guy, John, but I'll take the compliments. I appreciate it. And I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants too. There's so many guys that have come before me, so many amazing agronomists and researchers out there that are unsung heroes. They're not as well known in the mainstream world, especially not at the land-grant universities, one of which that I am a alumni of. But they really paved the way of understanding the land and understanding the importance in this. And the funny simultaneous thing is you really understand and read the writings of a lot of these scientists of the past, William Albrecht, Carrie Reams. They were all God-fearing men too. They understood the importance of stewardship of creation. And going back to our central themes, stewardship and dominion, and that responsibility we have. And so I think we will see more people come to light with all this stuff as time moves on. It'll have that Streisand effect. It's going to have that. Same thing, the microcosm of it, like Dr. Michael was talking about, was the Impossible Meat and the Beyond Burger. They had that big drop. It was like 2014, and they had another one. They tried to re-push it again. And everyone's like, nah, I'm not buying that. There was like some funny photo. I remember a while back, someone took a photo in the supermarket in the meat section. Like it was a shortage, or it was
during the dark years.
during the dark years. And the
Uh-huh.
Impossible Meat, Beyond Meat section was still pristine. Nobody touched any of it, but everything else was cleaned out. And so I think that's going to be the case.
I think people viscerally know that this isn't food.
Mhm.
And I have hope in that.
Yeah.
And that's my big concern too. Again, particularly the new converts, but even those who are battle hardened in Orthodox fasting, of just because it's there, just because it has the little V label on it that says it's vegan,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you should be eating it. Yes, we are called to be stewards. And yes, we are called to have dominion and be able to take God's creative activity as humans and to improve upon it. But there's the caveat. There's the key. Actually improve upon it.
Yes.
We don't take and bastardize a quality food and turn it into whatever this stuff is. And so to that point, you're going to be much better off eating real food from a location that wasn't being sprayed down with those pesticides that are going to disrupt your microbiome and your hormones, that aren't going to cause inflammation and, God forbid, longer-term cancer, that are nutrient dense because they have those 18 nutrients that are required from that vegetative to final stage of the plant development that Nick was talking about before.
Yeah.
And if they have those, they're probably going to be better packed with nutrients when they actually land on your plate. Because the same thing with humans, and I use that analogy with cows and things, right? That cows eat grass. And so the better the quality that the animal ate, the better the inputs for the plant, the better the long-term outcomes are going to be for us. And so the more well-versed you are on where your food is coming from, the much better opportunity you're going to have long-term. And so leave that Impossible Meat right where it was during the dark years on the shelf until finally, God willing, it's no longer there.
Amen to that.
Fasting isn't starvation, it's formation. Seasons of fasting are gifts, but they can be really hard on a tired body. If you want to keep fasting without burning out, then reach out to work with Orthodox Health and me, Dr. Mike. We can help to align your meals, your protein types and timing, as well as your training to the church's rhythm, so you stay clear, steady, and prayerful. You'll get live coaching calls and simple tools to navigate parish life, travel, and family schedules without scrapping the fast or your health. No extremes, no guesswork. Just a faithful plan that respects the wisdom of the church and the reality of your week. So at the end of the fast, you're not depleted, but you're formed. So head on over to orthodoxhealth.com to book a free call with Dr. Mike.
The thing that's impossible about it, it says impossible to eat.
I like it. I like it.
So jumping off from there, I want to ask what it might look like to use this opportunity of the Nativity fast to reconnect with simple real foods, be that beans, different grains or roots, fruits, olive oil, instead of these high-tech substitutes.
Yeah, I mean, initially it's going to take some time to get a routine going. And ideally, we want to try and have some versatility with our food, even though we are relatively limited. But we want to try to move on from just eating PB&Js every single meal. But this gives you opportunity to kind of look and research into different recipes and things you never tried before, and maybe you find some things that you really do enjoy. Reconnecting again, like I said, if you have the availability with, say, a CSA program or your local farmers or a farmer's market or something, you're going to be able to bring in seasonal varietal fruits and vegetables that you may have never tasted something so fresh before. And you go, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that. I didn't know that's how a strawberry is supposed to taste or an apple is supposed to taste or something like that. Yes, the fast is designed for us to have self-discipline and sacrifice and building greater connection to God by pushing away things that are going to be, in essence, putting us into a
hyper-stimulated state. I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Things that zinc are going to be promoting of your testosterone. Pretty
Mhm.
sure we're talking about on the episode with Gavin when John was still gallivanting around the world. But it's a situation where, hormonally, there are effects from a meat-heavy diet.
Yeah.
Like, that is a fact. And
Yeah.
so while the Saints might not have been talking about it from a scientific perspective at the time, they understood there is something to the essence of that animal. And while the zinc is a major part of it, as we said before, it is not the only part. If you simply create that lab-grown meat, it's probably not going to have the same effect, but I can't recommend eating it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it too, in the fasting period, we are trying to cut away from conveniences. Ideally, you're trying to be giving, especially during the nativity fast right now, we're trying to be having more almsgiving. We're trying to cut back on excessive expenses and things like that. Well, if you're going to have to make those expenses, why not try to invest it into your local community if you're able to, if you have that opportunity? Invest it into things that you truly believe in. These farmers and ranchers, individuals who are pursuing those good stewardship practices. And on top of it, I mean, if you're able to select and find foods that are seasonal, you're connecting with the local produce. You're basically engaging in the local biome of that area. And that's going to be extremely beneficial. I mean, Dr. Mike can definitely elaborate much more on that on your systems. So yeah, I mean, it definitely takes some time. But I mean, luckily as well, going back to the good side of social media, there are some very interesting things that have been coming out recently with a lot of interesting Orthodox fasting recipes, people that have a nutrition background, and they're showing, hey, you have 1,000,001 different options with your lentil beans, your fava beans, and whatever. So you can experiment, play around a little bit.
I don't know, man. All I know about fava beans is that you're supposed to have it with liver and a nice Chianti. So we've talked a bit about it, about how it's important to support local and all of that. What would be the first step or two that people could take literally this week? What can they do to help to take back that future of food without having to storm Bill Gates' compound?
Not endorsing it. I would say initially try to set time for your family to be in the kitchen with you. If you can do that with your schedule, be it maybe a Saturday and you're doing a prep of multiple meals or something to save time. Build that loving relationship with your food in the kitchen, having, like you've talked about multiple times on previous episodes, having that time together when you're eating, having reverence for the meal at dinner time, at lunchtime if you can, and obviously centered around prayer, centered around the church. It's the utmost important of it all.
Beautiful. And actually, building off of last week's with the almsgiving and taking care of people, if you are doing that batch cooking, you're doing the meal preparation, there is nothing stopping you, especially for the fasting type meals where it's very rice or other starch heavy. It's a little bit cheaper overall. Go and prepare a little bit extra. And if you can, whether you know somebody who needs it or you can find somebody, now is exactly the time to be helping on that process.
And I'm gonna also help out with this as well, that some people may not be aware of this. Let's say you're in an area that it's not as easy. You're in a quote unquote food desert. In a food desert situation, you're having a harder time trying to find these things. There are operations out there that work nationwide to provide this food to you. It's not quite local, obviously, but one of them that I greatly endorse is this company, Azure Standard. And I'll give Dr. Mike the website address to put in the show notes.
Please.
Azure Standard supports local farmers and local operations, especially those who are really, really emphasizing soil health, biodiversity, regenerative and organic practices. And basically how they set their operation up is they're based out of Oregon and they are trucking this food nationwide, and they have specific stops throughout the states. And you just type in your location, you type in your zip code, and they show you where the closest drop-off is. And I'm almost positive they'll have a drop-off for you. It may be a little bit of a drive for some people, but it's one of those things where your dollar is going to the support of the local farmers, the local ranchers, and those who are trying to do better with the land and the stewardship.
And to that, I know there are people like John who are on their parish council, and I've been on it previously. What role do you think parishes could play in establishing parish gardens, CSA drop points, becoming an area where you can be that hub
establishing bulk buying clubs, or even we talked about the different resources that are coming out now, having fasting cooking classes. Actually, as a quick sidebar on that, last week, one of the women at my church announced that they'll be collecting recipes because we're going to be putting out a fasting and feasting cookbook, actually. So when that comes out, I'll let you all know when the St. John of Chicago cookbook comes out. But what can we do on that parish level? You're in the industry on that front. Maybe you can help the parish councils, the priests themselves, be able to springboard off of that.
Yeah, I think all of those ideas are absolutely fantastic. I think as well, it goes into the meals that are served and shared, especially at coffee hour. Not being demonizing, obviously. We don't want to be judgmental of people who are going to be bringing in stuff that's like, don't really want to eat that. But, bringing the dialogue to the parish, maybe you being the representative, you're saying, hey, we have this plot of land. Let's start a raised garden bed or a few garden beds. And like going back to the previous episode when we talked about that, going in and utilizing, there's a plethora of gardening books out there that are available to read online or going to your local library. There are quite a few places, you'll have to look for them, but that will have like master gardener operations. Like Texas is very big on master gardener setups. But going back to what we had talked about previously, the use of the Farmer's Almanac, the Almanac website, you go in there, you set your location. They're going to give you your planting dates. They're going to give you what's going to be able to grow at the time of season and get you set up. And they have step-by-step guides to help you get to that point where you're going, okay, I've got my garden box. What do I need to fill with it? What do I need to grow? Spacing, all of those things. It's all available there. And I think it just starts with the jumping off point of who wants to take the reins on that and get that going. But yeah, I think all of those are great ideas to have. And it just takes someone just to stand up and volunteer for it and get it going.
Yeah, I think that those are all great. I honestly have really looked forward to maybe having an opportunity to do something like that at our parish with the raised beds. But we're going to need to find the space because like we talked about a little earlier about all the growth that's happening. And I'll definitely trade having the raised beds for all the growth. We did some really beautiful work at our parish with the parking lot project and all these new things because we just have so much more people. So the space we would have had to do the gardening isn't so available anymore. But I think that for a lot of places, it's definitely available and they should take advantage of it.
Absolutely. So on a personal level, how do you balance not obsessing over food on the one hand and at the same time not handing your pantry over to big corporations, the technocrats on the other hand?
Going back to what we had discussed, it really is going from the ground up and you're making small transitions over time. I kind of equate it to if I come onto a farming operation and let's say they've been very, very conventional for a long time. They're like, we need to change our ways. I'm not going to just stop everything immediately. That's going to bring shock to your system as well. You have to make very small and incremental changes over time. And those little incremental changes build upon themselves. So with that being said, like what we've discussed, it's seeking out local food sources if you have them available. If you don't have them available, maybe finding operations that bring some of those healthier food options to your area. If you have the ability, trying to, maybe start a small garden. And it's going to be a trial and error, of course. As easy as it looks on, Farm Simulator, it can be challenging at times to get a garden going, but over time, you'll get the concepts down. I'm not perfect with all of my operations. There's some times where things just don't go right because God and nature have their own way, and we're kind of at the whim. We do our best. And then simultaneously, if you're still struggling and you're having a hard time, obviously always go and seek guidance from your priest, your spiritual father. Reach out to them and discuss your concerns, your issue, your struggles. They're going to help you work through these things. That's what they're there for.
It's actually funny that you mentioned Farming Simulator. I've been playing Farming Simulator 25 for like the last week or so. Because I knew we were doing this episode and I happened to be sitting there. I was like, I keep seeing this game pop up and I've never played it. Let me try it. I love it. It is such a blast. And I've got a couple cows. I got canola growing. I got some grass, getting ready to do my silage. So I'm all in. I'm having a great time with it.
It does give you a good understanding of the cyclical nature of it, though. I will say that much.
That's fair. All right. So lightning round. All right.
Here
We're
we
going to
go.
play a little game. Real food or fake fasting? So the Beyond and Impossible Burgers, real food or fake fasting?
Fake fasting.
Oat milk?
Fake fasting, but I will preface it though. If you really need that oat milk bad, read the label, know what they're putting in it, or if you can, try to figure out how to make it yourself. But ultimately, I'm going to put that in the fake fasting. And also, if you're not allergic, a little coconut milk will do just fine. But
Absolutely.
that's just me.
All right. Cricket flour and insect protein bars. Real food or fake fasting?
Fake fasting, definitely.
Not going to eat the bugs?
No, I'm not going to have the bugs. No.
All right. 3D printed steaks or lab grown nuggets?
Fake fasting.
Absolutely. Ultra processed vegan cheese slices.
Fake fasting.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of not the best game, but
Just
wanted
driving
to
the
have that
point
there.
home.
Exactly. Really drive that home. But I know myself, but if you had to pick one category of fake fasting foods that people really should ditch first, which would it be and why?
Probably Impossible and the Beyond Meat, because that seems to be still kind of in the conversation a bit. I mean, I haven't seen any 3D printed steaks for sale yet. Hopefully that's not the case. And the insect powder is still kind of novel
Little
and
niche.
niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would get rid of those first. Yeah. And again, like with the milk, it's the additives that concern me more than anything else, and the sourcing of where they're getting the main ingredients.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you really, really need that stuff, really make sure you're understanding what's being put into it and how it was farmed. So that's what I would go with.
Let me ask you quick, because you mentioned not seeing any of the printed meat on the shelves necessarily. What are your thoughts on that situation with Campbell's that just happened, where they're
Good
saying,
points.
oh, we're putting this in the food, but we're not telling you? Because I've seen, I mean, beside that, there's all these videos of people looking at chicken, for example, from different
Yeah.
fast food restaurants, and they're saying,
Mhm.
this is not chicken. It's like way too pliable. It doesn't behave like chicken should behave.
Yeah. And I
What are your
think there
thoughts on
was,
that kind of thing?
so to add on to that, I think there was a nationwide franchise. I don't want to say it was Texas Roadhouse, but for some reason, that's
It
the one
was.
it was. Okay.
Yes.
They were doing glue in their steaks. Yeah.
Oh
You
my
know,
goodness.
yeah, you'll have to look it up. I think it was a very brief blip, but there was some individuals that were putting out videos and stuff about
Wow.
it, which again, it goes back to the aesthetics. People want specific things, and if the demand is so high, the supply can't facilitate. They're going to figure out ways to get around that. So good point about the Campbells. I completely forgot about that. And for those who don't know, that was very recently. It was like maybe 2 weeks ago, I think, when that guy got hot mic'd. It was their board member or
Yeah.
something, and then he very abruptly left or was fired, I think. Long story short, so they got a very interesting, it was a board meeting or something. He got hot mic'd, and he said a lot of very derogatory things about their consumers and their customers, but it was also that they were using 3D printed chicken, which was news to me because I don't eat Campbell's soup. I haven't had it since I was maybe 12 years old and I was sick. But yeah, it does bring concern to me because it was one of the points that we hadn't quite touched on, is the concern of having this response by the consumers to not want this stuff, and then they backdoor and they secretly start putting it into the food supply without proper addressing and acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a very big concern, especially because it goes back to a lot of the genetically modified operations, the bioengineering, the potential for these novel microbial species that are being produced, that they're lab-grown microbes, which somehow they're able to get by saying it's not genetically modified. Go
Yeah.
figure.
And I know they were doing the same thing in the last couple of years, even regarding the utilization of mRNA technology on different cattle production.
Yeah, cattle and pig, they're using mRNA technology, which actually I think they might have had to pause it or something because they were having such detrimental effects to it. And they were inadvertently creating more problems in those CAFO environments, which are confined animal feeding operations.
Well, and to that point, though, as we've been discussing throughout the course of this episode, are we really sure that it was unintended consequences?
Pondering minds will continue.
Absolutely. So for the listener who's feeling overwhelmed, and hopefully you're not, at the end of the day, we know who wins. But if you are still feeling that right now, about everything's poisoned, how do we get around this? And I can't win. What are some words of encouragement you would give to help provide them with hope?
Have hope and faith in the changing of the tides with all of this. You, by listening to this podcast, you're already on the right path. You're already getting a discernment and understanding what's going on. Again, seek out the information you're looking for. Seek out the local sourced food. Seek out your farmers. Seek out a way that you can, with your community, your church community, your family, your neighbors, maybe if you have the ability, start trying to grow some stuff yourself. I would say that this grassroots community of being informed conscientious consumers is growing immensely. There's a lot of people that are coming out of all this, out of a certain incident of dark ages, that are really skeptical of the status quo and the narrative that's being presented to them. And so they're going, we need to start looking at alternatives. So I would say that much. You be vigilant and be very proactive.
Awesome. So I know from your previous appearance, people were able to reach out and find you and able to work with you. But where can they, for the people who are listening now for the first time, actually get to work with you and help to push back against this fake food agenda and the idea of properly treating the land?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, Regenerative Agriculture Solutions. I'm also at regenerativeagsolutions.com. I'm always happy to chat. Drop me a message and I'll help you in whatever way I can or find you the right information you're looking for.
Beautiful. John, any last thoughts?
Yeah, just another thank you to Nick for being here with us. I think this was a fantastic conversation. And again, it does end on a hopeful note that there is a grassroots movement that's growing. People are becoming more aware of what's going on. It's like I said earlier, that David did topple Goliath, and so can we. So we'll just keep trusting in the Lord, and we'll do the same.
Amen.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
Have a blessed nativity fast. We're only a few more days away, and then you can indulge and enjoy yourself and enjoy the Christmas time with your families. God bless you all.
Awesome. So yeah, even though you stole my line earlier, I will have him send me over some links for y'all in the show notes to put down there as a means for you to have those actual practical solutions of how to help reconnect with your local sources. As I said, definitely appreciate you coming on and helping us to untangle a little bit of this mess. There's so many more rabbit trails we thought to go down, and we've kept you here for quite a while, so we'll save those for another time. But at the end of the day, the real key is focusing on Christ as the one who feeds us with his own body and blood. The question isn't, is this vegan, or what's my carbon score? The deeper questions are, is this real creative food? And does this help me to become more human like Christ? And that's going to lead us into next week's episode, where we're going to be doing nativity around the world. And we're going to be diving into different traditions of the nativity season and how people work towards building towards that feast in different cultures around the world, and tying a little bit back towards the health. We thought that'd be a nice little sidebar to tackle.
Absolutely. What a beautiful time of year. We could talk about, like Dr. Mike said, the lead up to the feast during the fasting season, but then the way that people do celebrate and enter into the feast when Christ is born. So looking forward to that episode. I think it's going to be a really fun discussion.
Absolutely. Leaving with the last thoughts here, the key is we want to focus on whether or not these fasts are making us better Christians, in the sense of, are we more capable of love? Are we actually participating in our almsgiving, in our prayer, in our gratitude, and in communion, both with Christ himself and with our community at large? And using these practices from today will help us to integrate more with that local community, ideally. So having said that, if you are practicing the fast and you are noticing that the way in which you are doing so is leading you more towards that, then yes, you're heading in the right direction. So having said all of that, may God grant you some good strength in the fast, some joy in the upcoming feast, for Christ is born, and some wisdom at the table. Until next time, God bless.
Is available on Spotify, Apple Music, and all of your other favorite listening locations. And you can also find us available on YouTube at Dr. Michael Christian, Rumble at Orthodox Health, and Substack at Orthodox Health Podcast. You can also follow us on social media for more insights, discussions, and behind-the-scenes content. Connect with us on Instagram at Orthodox Health or in our Telegram group at Orthodox Health Podcast, and join the conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts, answer your questions, and continue building this community together. And finally, if you're enjoying the show, leaving a quick review on your favorite podcast platform goes a long way in helping others discover Orthodox health. Until then, stay strong in faith, take care of your temple, and keep Christ at the center of your health journey. God bless.